This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for The Rant with Barbara Rose Brooker. And for those of you who are not familiar with Barbara, well, you should be. She should be a household name. She's an author, she's an activist. And when I say activist, we talk about agemarch.org because age has nothing to do with our vitality. So welcome, Barbara, and tell me what we have planned for today.
Thank you, Karen, for the introduction. Today, listeners, you're in for a treat. We have a fabulous, fabulous Barry Miller with us. Barry's from New Jersey. Barry is a well-known, experienced, incredible writer and PR person. I say he has the best PR company. Anybody who wants PR out there or marketing, call Barry. And the name of Barry's company, I have to read it because my head today, Fun Friends USA. It used to be a different name. Yeah, Fun Friends.
No, Trends.
Oh, I'm sorry. Fun Friends USA.
Fun Friends. But we have a lot of friends. So that's fine. That's fine.
But Barry has represented everyone from authors to companies, and he's also written a wonderful book about PR. What we're going to talk about today, let me just say one thing that I was thinking about, Barry, because today we're going to specialize in the subject of homophobia, which is very close to my heart because like racism, like ageism, like homophobia, we seem to live in a culture, in America particularly, where everybody is divided and fenced off, either by numbers, by sexuality, by gender, by everything. And it's very tragic to me. And it's sexuality is who we are. Just like, and I don't mean to compare, but just like I say, age is not just a number, it's who you are. It's not a one size fits all. So with homophobia that is so rampant, I mean, I know I have a brother or had a brother who stayed in the closet his entire life, and he just passed 2 years ago. And shortly before he died, I could cry saying this, he said to me, I wished I had the guts to come out. Now, can you imagine in a culture like ours, where I say, Adam and Eve, okay, they took a bite of the apple. Adam was probably gay. God may be gay. We don't know. We don't know. The human species is so many things. So I've always thought that gay men and gay women are extra, extra, extra special genes because they're so wonderful, brilliant, creative. I'm always in love with gay men. So I want to know from you as a gay man, you talked about, or you have talked about in high school, how early did you feel bullied? Or I'm going to let you talk the evolution.
Well, you're referring to an essay I wrote on Medium, which you had introduced me to.
Right. Tell us about that.
An online publication, if you will, where writers can submit any essay, anything that's on their mind, and it's generated a lot of interest around the world and around the country. So I wrote in July, or submitted an essay on, the title was Better Sir Than Fag. And what that was all about was, I'm 62, but and I was reflecting in my mind about, boy, I'm getting older. And in the last year or two, I've been getting a lot of people, doormen, waiters, waitresses, yes, sir, hi, sir, thank you, sir, would you like help, sir? And it's like, where did the sir thing come about? You know, it's like, oh my God. It's like, I guess women feel the same way. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. It's like, you know,
Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
same thing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it got me thinking about, geez, well, people there, and they were being very respectful. And I'm thinking, boy, when I was a teenager, I did not get any respect. It's like Rodney Dangerfield. I didn't get any respect. And, you know, just the opposite. These from, you know, from freshman year on, actually in junior high, but in my essay, I talked about high school from freshman and sophomore years. People, the kids, the guys mostly, were so mean, so rotten, physically abusive, spouting out fag and homo and all these horrible things to me. And I
How old
wasn't the
were
only
you?
one. I wasn't
How
the only
old
one.
were
But
you?
what's that?
How old were you at
Well,
the
let's see.
time?
High school is like from what,
Oh, in high
14 to 18. So it was the first 4 years, first 2 years.
school.
You know, the kids were going through puberty, and everything has sexual connotation, and they were just out of control. And they needed to bully somebody, and here I was. You know, I was quiet, I was studious, I was unathletic. You know, I fit all the boxes, checked off all the boxes. And it was very upsetting to me, and became very introverted, even more so. And then I'd come home very upset. But fortunately, I found that I could deal with it by diving into my studies, where other kids, uh, you know, might get into drugs, or booze, or sex, or
Mm-hmm.
suicide. Who knows? I didn't do that, but I was fortunate I didn't do that. I'm glad I did, of course. So the essay deals with how, um, you know, how difficult it was back then, and how the after effects, because, you know, by junior and senior year, the kids have settled down, they found girlfriends, they found other activities. They didn't need me anymore. They didn't need to bother me anymore. But it had a deep effect on me. It really upset me, and I was very depressed for a while, and I got into talk therapy in my 20s, and then eventually started seeing the psychopharmacologist to help me, you know, with drugs. When I was doing talk therapy, Prozac was just barely out, so it wasn't even an option.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, years later, now everybody's popping pills, like the Valley of the Dolls. You know, we're just popping pills but it helped.
Antidepressants.
What's that?
Antidepressants they hand out like candy, too.
Yeah, it is. But it helps. I mean, you have to, at
Yeah.
least for me, I have to have it monitored, because it's not just like you get it on a regimen and suddenly that's it for life. You sometimes
Barry,
have to.
I want to ask you, how did your parents respond to your sexuality during this time? Did you have a positive reinforcement at home?
I
You
don't know.
didn't.
Well, they didn't know. I mean, I didn't come out to them until I
Oh,
was
you
20.
didn't.
Yeah, I was already in college. I had already attended 2 years of college,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't even know for sure. I mean, you know, I knew I had an attraction for other men, but I didn't know for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
by the time I was 20, I was pretty comfortable with it, and I decided in the summer of 1978, just before going off back to school, going to NYU, I told my parents, and boy, they did not take it well at all.
They didn't.
They did not take it very well,
Right.
and
That
that
was
really
the
put me back.
generation, too.
What's that?
That generation, too. You know, I just want to interject and say, why is it that so many families then, and so many families even now in our culture, the kids have to lie or pretend or get married to a woman and have a child and be unhappy just to
Yeah.
fit this image, this ridiculous, absurd thing in society that I think is connected to religion and all kinds of bugaboo that you have to be one way.
Mm. Well, I mean, back then, I mean, we're not talking like 100 years ago, we're talking like
I
30,
know.
40 years ago. Pop culture, I mean, anytime you'd see gay people, openly gay people, they'd be villains, they'd be committing suicide,
Right.
all these negative attributes. But there were gay people in the movies and all that were like the clowns and whatever, but asexual clowns, but you knew they were gay if you really thought about it.
Mhm.
So, you know, my parents and others bought into that whole routine. That's what they were exposed to. That's
Okay.
what they knew about gay people by watching these movies and reading these books and all that. Gay people were rarely portrayed as decent people, good people, achievers. And then, in recent years, with all this openness and TV shows and movies, and suddenly a lot of actors and other people, politicians are coming out, and gay marriage. Suddenly, this new generation of parents, they see that gay people can be really quite talented and just like them, good people, bad people. But years ago, I remember whenever there would be a movie and there was a lot of outrage for the movie Cruisin', which came out in the 70s.
Mhm.
This was one of the few mainstream movies that came out about gay life. Well, guess what? The main characters were serial killers. So there were protests. The gay community got up in arms because that's what it was all about. That was the gay movie, and the gay men were being murdered by this other crazy gay man, and so they were rightly upset. But now you go to Netflix and you want to see a gay movie, like not a porn movie, but a regular movie. There are dozens and dozens of choices from all over the world. It's remarkable how many.
Oh, yes. I mean,
They're not good, but they're there. Some of them are good.
remember when I remember my mother saying, "Oh my God, I just found out Rock Hudson is gay."
Yeah.
And, the women were crying and everything. Isn't that too bad? He had to hide that he was gay.
Until he had AIDS and he was dying. That
That's
changed so much when he came out. It was a shame he hadn't come out years before, but he did come out. And suddenly Reagan and
I
others.
think our generation of parents were hiding themselves. They didn't want to accept the gay community. And I had an aunt and uncle, their oldest son, who is my favorite cousin in the whole world. At 9 years old, I told Stuart I was going to marry him. And he told me, "No, you're not." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Someday I'll explain it to you. It's not because I'm your cousin." Okay. Eventually found out he still was my favorite cousin. And to this day, sadly, he's no longer with us, but he is still my favorite cousin. He was the most honest person. But when I would hear my aunt and uncle talk about him being gay, they would say, "We can't accept this because you saw what Hitler did to all the odd people. They were gay." And that's what my family talked about, except for my mother and father. And my mother and father just said, "He's your son. He's your flesh and blood. Why can't you love him and accept him for who he is?"
Right.
And they just couldn't. And I'm grateful to my parents for opening the doors to me and saying, "Hey, we're all people."
Right. No, that's good. You're very fortunate.
Can we not have a culture now and in the future without labels, gay, straight, transgender, fluid, queer, this, that? Why? We're just all people. I really look forward to it. I probably won't be here being 84, but a generation where we don't even have to talk about this. I just want to say, as Barry knows and Karen knows, my last novel, Love Sometimes, she falls in love with a gay man. And I didn't go deeply into it, but I'm getting all kinds of mail and texts. I'm getting some hate mail from these women who are saying, I won't even go into it. It just seemed very natural to me. People love each other. They love each other. It's not, everything isn't about sex. I mean, Cole Porter was married to Linda for 42 years, and he had his freedom with other men, but they loved each other. Do you think, Barry, we'll ever have that culture where we won't be defined by our sexuality?
Well, we're going to be defined by something. So if it's not going to be sexuality, it's going to be color, it's going to be nationality. It's people just like to divide and conquer. I mean, I don't know what it's all about. there's so many people out there right now, you know, what's going on in the world about migrants and others. There's always going to be an other, whether it's rich, poor, middle class, educated, uneducated, you know, that's just the way human nature. Now, saying that, you know, I don't see anything wrong with people saying like, you know, I'm gay, I'm a gay American, African American, whatever. It defines who they are if they look at the roots, you know, if they embrace who they are.
Yes, but not discriminated against.
Right. If they don't, the discrimination. And the thing is, you know, as more, like I'm a second generation American. My parents were first generation. My grandparents came from Europe. Now, I don't have any kids. So for me, I took the Ancestry.com thing, I spit in a tube and I send it off. And guess what? I'm Eastern European. No kidding. You know, I know that. But today, these you know, millennials and whatever, they're finding out they're Irish, Jewish, and Norwegian. And I mean, as each generation moves on and they marry other people, then their backgrounds have become more and more involved, which I find fascinating. And suddenly, you are the world. You know, you have so many different.
You are the world, and I think that's interesting. Pete, I never can pronounce his last name, Buttigieg. When he was running, yeah, and everybody was saying, "Oh, we'll have the first gay president," and I thought, we're still in a society where, well, we had Obama, the first Black president. Yeah. Okay, we're going to have the first gay president, but everyone was making such a deal out of it.
Well, it is a big deal in that, because like anything else, if you have the same thing over and over and over and over, white, you know, Protestant male president for 200 and some years, and then you suddenly have a Black president or a Catholic president with John F. Kennedy, it's like, wow, there are other options out there. We almost have
which is a good thing.
It is a good thing, but it's newsworthy, and it's exciting to, whether if for Obama it was exciting to the Black community, obviously it was exciting to a lot of communities who thought it would never happen. That's that right. If you could get in, other people can, Latino, Jewish, whatever, you know, Native American president, wouldn't that be something? You know, once the ball's sort of broken down, other possibilities are there. So, you know, you can rejoice in other people's success. You don't have to be threatened by it.
Which is wonderful. I mean, also gay movies, gay books. What about if we just have books and movies where gay people and straight people, whatever people, are all together without having the categories?
Well, see, that's the publisher's situation. And the movie, they have to fit things in. Like, okay, it's a gay character, so it has to be gay fiction or gay. So they're part of the problem, you know. But they have to market it. You know, they're going through all techniques. Okay, so if it's a gay character, then we have to focus the gay community. Mm-hmm. But then I've noticed certain things. In recent years, for whatever reason, just for escapism, I've been reading a lot of mystery books, you know, pop mystery books by good writers. But I've noticed just about everyone I've read, and you know, from different people, they always have gay characters in them. And mm-hmm. I'm thinking, that's really something. And these are straight writers who are writing this. And not only do they have gay writers in them, the gay characters come across very well. And I'm thinking, I never knew this. I never would think that in these mystery books, and like this what's his name, Harlan Coben, and then there's, well, I'll have to tell you another time. I don't have this, but these are people who have been writing for a while, and they're huge bestsellers. But they are categorized as mystery writers or crime writers. They're not categorized as gay writers, but they have gay characters, important gay characters in their books.
I love that.
Yeah, and I was surprised.
Do you think it's only in America, Karen, too? Do you think it's only in America where we seem to be so sociologically antiquated?
No, this is a global issue, and I think
Yes.
Again, you go back into our cultures, okay? When you were a young girl, and I'm sure, Barry, when you were a young boy, your parents sort of set a path that you were going to walk down, okay? These are the clothes you're going to wear. And, you know, you can be this cute little boy at 2 years old, and you're pointing out the little 2-year-old girl across the way. You're not necessarily pointing out the 2-year-old boy across the way. And this is part of our culture. I have a young niece, or she's a grandniece actually, um, who last year, I believe she's 11 or 12 years old, she told her parents that she no longer is going to go by her female name. She has a male name. She dresses like a boy. This is who she believes she is, and she wants us all to respect it. Now, when I first saw it, I choked up because I thought, you're so young. But then again, I felt as like a female at her age. So if she's not feeling like a female,
Yeah,
then she's entitled to whoever she wants to
that's
be.
right. That's right.
But yet, in the beginning, you know, she was dressed in dresses and ruffles and all these little things because that was the path that, parents take.
How
Well,
old is she?
I believe she's like 12 right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
but in America, we just seem to be so behind. When I saw a picture after my brother died 2 years ago, and I saw one of the pictures my mother had of him dancing with a girl in dancing school. And I could see in his eyes, he looked so in another place because he confided to me when he was 3, he knew that
Great.
he was gay. Yes. And it was so taboo, at least within the realm in which he lived. Do you feel, Barry, writing this essay that you wrote for Medium, which is a incredible essay, are you going to write more of these about um, being gay at now and looking back and how you were raised?
Hmm. I
And
might, I'm thinking of doing a follow-up piece on the response I got from the article. I got hundreds of responses
yeah, yeah.
um, from, on Facebook. I posted links to the article on various social media groups, just asking if people could relate to it. And I got a lot of response.
Mhm.
And, a number of the people were my age or older, but a lot of them were younger. And they were saying that they hadn't gone through what I had, but then some of them had gone through a lot worse. But one guy in particular had mentioned that twice an ambulance had to be sent to his high school and for him to be taken to a hospital.
Oh my God.
Geez, that's pretty bad. And other people, were disowned by their families, and they haven't spoken to anybody in their families for
Even
decades.
today, you're saying even today,
Oh,
now.
even today, yeah. I mean, it was a cross section of people, guys mostly, some women too, but guys mostly, American and throughout the world, which I found interesting. This guy from Scotland was talking about what he went through. Was he could have been living anywhere in the United States. It was the same reaction.
I think you've really hit on something, and I think your voice is important because we think we're so evolved on this subject because we'll use examples like, all the great men who are gay are our literary figures, and Michael Tilson Thomas, the conductor, and Leonard Bernstein. But then there's all these young men and boys all around the country who are suffering and hiding because they're discriminated against and they have fear. They have fear. And I think by you've had such an illustrious and happy life with a happy relationship with David, your
Yeah,
partner, for how many years now?
we've been together 30 years.
30 years.
That is wonderful.
Isn't it? Oh, and he's wonderful.
And
I I think it's important for you to be speaking, Barry, from now with what you've been through, the inner conflicts that were caused because of our culture and society. You could say our anti-society, anti on everything, except for a few people that go on the covers of magazines or something.
Right.
But how about all the young boys? I have a niece right now who's 17 who came out, and I know what she's going through with her family.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
important for
it's a
you.
tough situation, but I mean, I'm hoping, I'm thinking from what I read that there are more families that are more open to it than they had been, and basically being exposed to people in politics and in entertainment and whatever. People, before it was a big secret. It was that who these people were. But I mean, when you think about there have been reports about how many gay people there are in the world. At one point, they were saying it's the 10%, and then others were saying, well, it's a lot smaller. Maybe it's 5%. Even if it's 1%. We're talking about millions of people who years ago would have to hide their identity. Millions.
It's expanding because more
Yeah.
people are coming out. The LGBTQIA community is expanding.
Well, they're more people feel more comfortable in being themselves and participating. Before, I mean, these groups either they didn't exist or they'd be kind of scared to participate. Well, you have all these Facebook groups now. You don't even have to leave your home. Well, nobody's leaving their home now anyway. But even beforehand, they could join these groups. They could have they could be anonymous. They could submit questions to their peers. People would write back and forth, chat rooms, video conferencing, all the stuff that I didn't have when I was growing up. And so it allows them to be who they are.
Well, and it takes allowing the conversation to be had and to be
That's
listening, okay?
Yes.
Not being ready to respond. Um, I remember going to a class reunion and there was a guy there who I wanted to date desperately when I was in high school. And when I saw him, I ran up to him. I gave him a big hug. He gave me a big hug. And within seconds, he introduced me to his partner.
Wow.
And my jaw dropped, but I was so happy for him because he had a special place in my heart. And when I said to him, I really wanted to date you when we were in high school, he said, I know. He said, you weren't my type. And we've remained very close friends on Facebook.
That's great.
So, I was willing to have that conversation, couldn't wait to see him. I saw him, I was expecting this beautiful model wife. And instead he had this wonderful partner who, has, added to my life, but you have to be open.
Yeah.
Well, I think you just said something. Why do we have to be open? I'm going to respectfully challenge that. Why do we have to be open? Why do we? It's still saying in a way some of my best friends are, and our culture. I mean, and I think what Barry said earlier too, to be themselves. It's all about all of us. All of us are trying to be our most, this word's kicked around a lot, authentic self. It's not easy to be our authentic self because we're so invested in layers of what we should be in this society. And one thing I think the COVID is doing is bringing us into our inner selves much more, because of the solitude, being at home, zooming closely, into our real selves. So being gay, being straight, being gay is really who we are. A lot of straight people think they're straight, but they're really not because they're afraid to go into themselves. And so I think that men and women who say I'm gay, I think they're saying, this is who I am. But why can't we, as a culture, is what I'm saying, move forward and progress a little more and allow a merging of men and women and gay men with straight men.
Well, it's getting a lot
Better, or is it
this whole thing about being fluid. There are a lot of people that say they're fluid, or they're non-binary, or they, there's a lot of that exploration going on right now,
yes.
which, was never discussed when it was either you're straight, gay, bisexuality. People would poo-poo and say that doesn't exist. A lot of people in the gay community still swear it doesn't exist. I believe it does. I believe it does. Yeah, definitely. But some gay people do not believe that. A lot of straight people don't believe it's possible. The thing is, everyone's unique.
Everyone is unique. I was watching a film last night on Robert Mapplethorpe, my favorite photographer, who of course is dead, and his photographs about gay men, gay sex, are so magnificent. And he had such an amount of pride and coming out, I just loved it. But I think it's very difficult for probably young men today, or not just young men. How about the man who's been married to the wife with children for 20 and 30 years? Miserably.
There are quite a few of them. There are quite a few of them. I was just reading on one of these Facebook groups. I think it's gay men over 40, no, gay over 50. They're like each decade there's another group. And I was reading somebody posted a question recently. He said, just curious, how many of you out there have been previously married to a woman? Oh. And my God, there were a lot of responses.
They had to. They had to fit the image of being a man.
Oh yeah, I mean, one guy was married for 30 years and had 2 children, and he came out and moved on, and others, it was eye-opening. But I know from David, and I know people, friends of ours, who were married when they were much younger and married and divorced and then moved on. But we didn't know anybody who was married, to the opposite sex for 30 years and then suddenly one day decided they're not going to be, they're gay. But there's quite a few of them out there, quite a few.
Barry, you mentioned going on Facebook and all these, I'd love to know more about the availability of these sites on Facebook. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So are you in touch with many different groups where they can reach you?
Well, yeah, I mean, when you go to Facebook, there's a search part. I think it's on the left side of the screen. And you just type in anything. You're typing, so you type in gay Americans, or gay Jewish people, or gay whatever, or just gay business people, gay period, LGBTQ, and then you'll get a menu of list the menu, and then you click it on, and then they'll ask you if you want to join the group, but you read the description, and then you click it on, and then they'll ask you a few questions in most cases, and then they'll get back to you. And for me, it was, but I didn't, maybe one group didn't want me, I don't know why, but other than that, it was interesting. And then you would, but the thing is, you could spend your whole life reading one group after another. There's so many groups out there, and they just keep multiplying.
Well, you live in New Jersey, and you grew up did you grow up in New York?
No, I was born in Philadelphia, grew up in South Jersey, then lived in Manhattan for a while, then lived in San Francisco for a while, and now we're in North Jersey, right near.
Yeah. So do you think other parts of the country, like Karen, say where you are in Cleveland, or other parts of the country, that there's a different congestion about it or attitude? Like Karen, you're not that way, but do you notice it?
I don't notice it here in Cleveland. Being the center of music and rock and roll and
Right,
theater.
right.
It just seems to be the natural, you know, um, and that's what, amazes me when I find somebody who will say, oh, my friend turned gay. And I'll
Yeah.
look at them and I'll go, no, your friend didn't turn gay. Your friend was born gay, and maybe they're just starting to accept it or come out of their shell or whatever, or maybe you're just learning it for the first time. But,
Right.
you know, I don't even ask my friends one way or the other. Like, Barbara, if I just met you, okay, I'm not going to ask you, are you married? Have you ever been married?
Right,
I don't
right,
ask those
right.
questions. I get to know you. And when those things filter out, they filter out. But
Exactly.
it to me, that's just not necessary. I don't need to know.
I mean, generally, very in other parts of the country, young men,
Oh, yeah. Well, years
they want to
ago,
come out here. I hear that all
oh,
the
yeah.
time in
Well,
California.
years ago, where I met David, for example, this was 30 years ago, we were both volunteers at the Gay and Lesbian Switchboard of New York.
Mm-hmm.
Now, evolved into the National Gay and Lesbian Hotline or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it was an organization based in Lower Manhattan, and people from all over the country would call during the afternoon and evenings, 7 days a week, um, with questions about being gay or just need to talk to someone or get information about AIDS prevention or treatment or where's the nearest bar and wherever. We got, it was a New York based thing, but we got calls from all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of places throughout the country that did not have gay hotlines, but they found out about us somehow. And the internet wasn't around at that point.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of people from these small towns who were just so isolated and had nobody to talk to and nowhere to go and really bad situation. So yeah, I mean, it's a very common situation that gay men and women and bisexuals and whatever will a lot of times will come from smaller towns and they'll go to the big cities. They'll go to San Francisco, they'll go to New York, they'll go to LA, Miami, and even the nearest biggest city, Cleveland, Detroit, Minneapolis, whatever. If they can't get to the heart to the biggest of cities, they'll go to the cities themselves. I mean, I grew up near Philadelphia, and Philadelphia, my God, downtown Philadelphia was so gay. In the late 70s, it was like the white middle class left the city, and the gays took over. Not entirely, but that happened in New York too, in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Cities were emptied out by the typical all-American white middle class, and what was left were some poorer people, some minorities, and a lot of gay people decided they were going to come to the city and be with each other, and a lot of them helped rebuild these cities, and
Yes.
then they were priced out.
Well, didn't the gay community in New York take over Fire Island there for a while?
Oh, Fire Island is still popular. I mean, not all of it, but there are two communities that are very gay friendly, that are practically all gay, Cherry Grove and the Pines. But there are other communities on Fire Island as well. But we have friends who went to Fire Island this summer, and it's like, I don't even want to leave our apartment. I'm not going to Fire Island, but there they were. And I have very mixed feelings about that because they were wearing masks and all that. But you're on a boat, next to a lot of people, and then it just seemed to me. Well, I don't think it was a good idea, but that's me.
I think the question I want to ask too is, God forbid, do you think another Matthew Shepard could happen?
Oh, of course.
I
It
have
happens all the time.
never gotten over Matthew. I dedicated God Doesn't Make Trash, my book on AIDS in San Francisco, to Matthew. Is that kind of lynching and
Well,
hate?
what's happening now? It's the transgender community that's getting
Oh,
the
absolutely. I know.
constant. I've been reading constantly about these transgender women that are
Murdered.
being murdered.
Murdered and lynched in San Francisco.
Oh, seriously, that I had
San Francisco.
all over the country, all
All
over
over
the
the
world.
country, because I have trans friends,
Right.
and they will not. They're scared to walk out at night,
Yeah.
even during the day
Right.
sometimes.
So that's the new focus of hatred, the
In
transgender.
the name of God, in the next breath there'll be this, Christian faith and God. And when Pence talks about faith and good Christian, I just get incensed. I want to say, well, everybody isn't Christian in the world.
Right.
And that's number one. And number two, if you're a good Christian, then you're going to be a good person, and you're not a good person.
Right.
And I won't get into that. My blood pressure
That's your
goes.
next program. That's your next program, Barbara.
But okay, and speaking of next program, I want to say that, Barry, I think that the fact that you are giving a voice in your writing, in your essays, and I say, listeners, go on Medium and type in the search Barry Miller. So the story will come up, but I'm hoping that you will write more of these. And I'm also hoping, since we're just starting the conversation, because I feel very strongly that, well, as an 84-year-old woman who feels age discrimination all the time, and my platform is ageism, I feel that gay men need to speak out more and need to come out more. And that I'm hoping there's going to be a merging of gay and straight people. I don't even like the word straight, just people, not defined. Anyway, I'm hoping that you will come back.
I'm sure.
Because this started.
I'm not going anywhere, Barbara. I'm never leaving my apartment again, ever.
By the way, I'm here. Outside, I'm emptying the garbage.
Right.
And after the program, I'll go for my quick walk just to air out my lungs.
Do you think that's a good idea right now, airing with all that
I don't
smoke?
think of air them out.
I know, with the two masks,
Yeah,
and everything. I watch people walking by with the oxygen.
Oh, no.
I mean, it's really
No.
bad. It really, you can see the fires actually.
Seriously? You
From
can?
the side of you see little tiny bits of flame in Hayward and about. They're still smoldering, and the heat still keeps going. It's very bad. But let me ask you one last question, Barry. What do you have a dream about? Well, Martin Luther King had a dream about people not being defined by color.
Right.
And do you have a dream now in your work, your voice, in helping other gay men?
Yeah.
How do you want to do this? How do you want to do this?
Well, what I recommend, what I recommend parents do. I mean, if we're talking about younger people, who are growing up and all that, I think it's, I don't know what I can do, except maybe write another essay or, whatever, be on your show or talk about it. But I think the most important thing is the family. I think parents have to encourage their children to be honest and open with them without any repercussions. They really parents have to make it a priority that in their households that their children truly can come to them with any problems or concerns. That is really my top recommendation, because if they can feel comfortable and supported at home, then they have a major advantage.
Early on or even later.
Yeah. I mean, if they can't feel comfortable at home and then they go to school and they get beat up and ridiculed, and they don't get any support from their peers, then what are they supposed to do? And so the parents and siblings too. I mean, but the parents primarily, and parents should lead by example, and the siblings should follow suit. And the parents, if the siblings are not responding properly, the parents really need to crack down on that. And the other thing is teachers. When I was growing up, my teachers saw what was going on. You know, they saw I wasn't being treated well. They didn't do anything. They didn't support me. They didn't pull me aside and say, I'm sorry you're going through this or whatever. I think teachers have a lot of responsibilities. I understand that. And they can't be substitute parents, but they can insist that their students respect each other. They could stand in front of the classroom and these kids start picking up people. They could stop the class and say, look, you know, if you're going to be in my class, you've got to respect everybody and everything. And if you don't, you're not going to be in my class. I'm going to kick you out. I'm going to have you transferred. I'm going to send you down to the principal. I'm going to contact your parents. I'm going to do something. But, you know, maybe today that happens more often. It didn't happen in my day, didn't it? And that would have made my life a lot better if some teachers had
Because the scars, the traumas, they stay in our psyches. I think it's important what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, kids are still developing, and you know, they need the extra support. I mean, when you think about adults, you know, get very overwhelmed and upset, and they go to therapists, and they're on drugs and all this. And then these days, like all these lawsuits about I'm being harassed and all that in the workplace. Well, and I think that's awful what's happening. But what about the kids getting harassed and grabbed and physically hurt? They have nothing to compare it to. They're very vulnerable, more vulnerable than anybody. They need extra help.
That is very important about the kids.
Yeah.
And I also want to say to listeners, for those of you who are hearing this and want to get in touch with Barry Miller, Barry, tell me how they can get in touch with you, your website.
Well, I probably, I could give my personal email address. I don't mind doing that.
Okay.
So it's Barry, Barry, D, like David, Mill. Barry D. Mill, Mill. BarrydMill @gmail.com.
That's perfect. And always they can get us through Cleveland radio, through Karen and myself. And I also want to say, since Karen and I, we're giving the first virtual Age March, Age magnificently, in history. I now am happy to say that Revitalash is going to be our sponsor.
How wonderful.
Yes, and it's going to be a real production. I had meetings yesterday, a lot of updating, Karen. I am getting thousands of people, thank you, from all over the country who are now joining agemarch.org. If you join agemarch.org, you will be automatically on our database to be part of this first virtual Age March, global, international in history. And I would like Barry and David, please join. And I would like very much the gay community to be a strong part of this Age March. I do not want this Age March to be a white, pretty march where everybody is going to look pretty with Botox faces and everything. That's not what my Age March is about. It's about being who you are, celebrating age pride. And I'm hoping that, like gay pride every year, someday we will have age pride every year for all races, all genders, all sexualities. So I'm hoping too, Barry, that you will join and pass this on to the gay community. And I hope you and David will be on the march, on the
As
virtual.
long as we don't have to leave our apartment, we'll be a
You
part
don't
of
have
it.
to leave
You won't
it.
have to- Nobody's leaving
We'll
their
march around the living room. That's what we'll do.
But you will get to, everyone will get to speak some and to hold, put their age on, you know, slogans. But
Yeah.
anyway, so listeners, thank you again for listening to this podcast. And thank you, Barry, so much
It
for
was
being
great.
on it. And
Thank you for
we
having me.
will let you know when Barry's going to be on the next time to continue this discussion. And if you want to find me, go to Barbara Rose Brooker, BROOKER.com. There, my website is right there, and you can see everything. You can meet me there. And if you want to read my latest novel, Love Sometimes, was released 2020, just go to Amazon. Okay, I stay safe, everybody.
You too, Barbara and Karen. It's nice meeting
Well, I'll
you.
be well. And we'll talk to you all next week.
And we'll talk to you next week. And Karen, thank you. Blow kisses to Barry.
I love.
Wish I could see Perry. Maybe next time I
Yeah,
can.
you can interview him if you speak parrot. Yes.
Oh,
Oh, he's
we'll have to learn that language.
Yes, it's a complicated one. It's a complicated
Have a great day, everybody.
one. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Bye.